Jason, James, we got everybody together. A little late, thanks to James. He had a whole rescue mission he was doing. We had a good Samaritan. You see that video, Jason?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Hell of a deal.
That's a cool machine.
Well, I guess if it works.
When it works, it's awesome.
They're lucky that it floats.
So anyways, all the users, we're going to do our antenna. I finally recorded this antenna. And Jason's up here. You got something to do with the dog.
Yeah, I'm on a road trip with the boys, so we figured we'd swing in and see.
So he's in the shop. And then I got James. Brad, he was on our first part 1 and part 2 of the antenna podcast, but he's gone in his cabin. He didn't have good internet, so he's not able to join us for part 3.
So we settled for James.
Yeah, so and he wasn't going to make it.
You better let him talk. I'm going to tell you right now. You keep inviting James and not letting him talk, though. He's going to say, screw you.
So he was going to be late, and he's like, I called him, and he's like, let me call you back. I'm doing firefighter stuff, basically. Anyways, take it away, James. What were you doing? Why were you late?
Oh, so the lake is frozen over right now. I don't know how much ice is really left there. Not enough to support that machine. And so there's all these people out ice fishing. Well, this call come through. Somebody had called 911 and paged the fire department out. And when the call originally came through, it said it was a 4-wheeler and it was sunk in the middle of the lake and there was 3 people on it. And so
it's probably a pretty serious call. I mean, like, we were joking now, at least everything's okay, right?
Yeah. At first it sounded like, oh, this isn't going to be any good at all. And so you get down there and I'm looking at it and I still couldn't really even tell what this thing was until we finally got it out of there. It took like 2 hours, but I get down there and there's 3 guys standing on a log boom and this machine is completely sunk except for like half of it sticking out of the water and it's high centered on a log boom. And so it looked like as they were riding out across the ice and it's like an Argo, this amphibious sort of vehicle, I guess, called a wheelcraft, some sort of ice.
It does not look like I would want to be on this thing in ice. I mean, if I had to describe this thing, it looks like a piece of plywood with 4 wheels and a go-kart engine. I mean,
yeah, it's really what it looks like, and it sounded like a go-kart engine. It was like paddle tires on it, but they drove it over. You know, the lake's frozen. Well, the log boom are surrounding this whole kind of boat launch area. Obviously, those logs are, they might be froze, but they're still floating. And
there's 3 dudes on that thing.
Yeah, there's 3. Well, at the point we hauled them out of there was only 2. One guy got out and walked, but yeah, they drove over the log boom, and so of course the log sunk, and then it broke all the ice out of the way when it did that, and it came back up, and they were high centered on it, and so we pull up and they're just out there. It sounds like a go-kart motor, and they're just giving her the onion. I mean, there's water flying all over the place, and I'm like, these guys aren't getting out of here.
Wind on it.
Yeah, and it's like, son of a bitch. So we ended up getting. We made one of those guys walk in because I was like, man, I don't really want to walk out there, and so we had a 1,000-foot spool of mule tape and had a rangefinder in the pickup, and I looked, and they were 140 yards off the shore. I'm like, well, we got enough to get to them. Yeah.
We can double up.
And so we got the guy, run some mule tape out to him, and he tied off to that thing. And
that's straight up bear camp stuff right there.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we start pulling him in, and the whole time the guy's like, he's clawing at the ice the whole way as we're hoping he could get back up on top of it, and drive himself out, but that wasn't the case. So we
break ice the whole way, huh?
Holy cow.
Break ice the whole way, and ended up moving a pickup down there and snatch blocked off the front of a truck so we could get a better angle at it, and we got him out of there. But yeah, it was a hell of a deal.
That's the thing, I think, with like those machines, like you think about Argos and, well, like I said, side-by-sides with tracks and sleds. They're all really cool until you get stuck. And then it's like this major freaking ordeal.
Well, especially like those side by sides on tracks. Like you get one of those things stuck, and no one can come get you.
Trust
It's
me,
like, oh,
I had
like-
that run through my head when we went and lost 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, like you're pretty much screwed. Well, Buddy had that
Yeah.
Suzuki on tracks, and what'd you have to go in reverse
No,
for
it
16
wasn't
miles?
16, but it felt like it.
That sounds legit.
I might have thrown 10 miles on the story, but yeah, me and Matt, we had one of that Suzuki, and I was going to go over a little snow berm, and I broke one of them rotation bars, and so if I tried to go forward, it wanted to flip the track around. But some redneck stuff, it would fly around going backwards, and it would land on one of those a bolt, and so I was able to stop the rotation going backwards by, just basically like a wrench almost. You know what I mean? Like a wrench would turn around and hit. I was hitting a spring or something. It was hitting something solid enough that I'm like, well, that'll work. Wrap it up a little bit, and we backed up the whole way.
Get creative.
It's a crappy day. Thanks for reminding me.
So
Yeah.
Buddy
Last time
kind of
you
tried to
used it.
talk me out of tracks on my tracker because that's what I thought. I'll just buy a set of tracks for this thing. I'm in it less than a side by side, and I got like real heat and a real car that I can drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do that.
Well, as long as you're okay like the guy that bought them from me, I said, as long as you're okay fabricating stuff, you're probably okay. But if you like to tinker and fabricate and figure stuff out, like, great. If you don't, this ain't the way for you. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be ready to break something and then figure out how to make it stronger. By the end of it, you're going to have a tank.
No.
And hopefully, the guy that drives the snowcat from the county so they can come get you and drag you out of there.
Yeah, because we can't afford the $200,000 snowcats. We're trying to do it in the
$5,000 crap box.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think I'm going to go beadlocks and just air down. That's what everybody keeps saying.
That's the way to go. You drop down to 1 pound of air, and it's amazing what you can do with 1 pound of air. Like that shop Jeep that I had with the back of it cut off, you could air that thing down to, I always went to about 3 pounds, but with 3 pounds of air in that, I could go way further than any Toyota that was chained up all the way around.
Yeah.
Really?
Surprisingly. And I really prefer Toyotas, but that Jeep aired down would go places that I really didn't need to be.
Hey, I know a guy that got his truck stuck in December, and I don't think they got it out until, probably April or May. They took a track side by side up in there, and the snow was up to the roof on the truck, and they were able to dig it out and get his stuff out. But that truck sat there for months.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Well, let's get to the antenna part. We've talked enough about other stuff, which we can keep going. But you guys both, before we talk about the big test that I did, which I was yesterday, I don't know if I talked to you, James, but I talked to Jason. And I thought I was going to have to redo this test because I thought something went wrong, and we'll talk about that. But before we get to that, you guys both got these new antennas, the Stubby antenna. The
I just got it, yeah.
James, you're about the only one that has messed with that tactical flip and the Stubby antenna this morning. You kind of did a little bit of playing. Thank you. Tell me what you thought on those two. This is all preliminary. I'm not sure on those tacticals. I brought them in to test them out a little bit, but I want to be real clear with people. I do not like any antenna we sell. I'm never like, oh, this is going to be the best antenna. You're going to get 2 miles, blah, blah, blah. I think some of these antennas are good, and I think they all should be about the same. But the tactical flip, I have not. I actually messed with it with Della today. We took her for a little walk. She did some small stuff, but I never got more than 400 or 500 yards away from her. And that was basically after I talked to James, and I was like, oh, I better at least check this before we have them on the website. But what did you do this morning, James?
So I went ahead and I turned a couple collars on and actually just threw them out in my front yard and left them in the yard. And I started with that small Stubby antenna, the new one,
Yeah.
And basically drove until, I lost it. And
Where did you lose it at the first time?
So the first time with that short Stubby antenna, I ended up going 1.1 miles. And it tracked it that whole way. And then I did lose it there. And once I lost it, I had to come back to about within 700 yards to pick it back up. But initially, I mean, it went way, way further than I expected it to for that short little thing.
It's shorter than the factory short range.
It's about the same, pretty close to the same length. Yeah. It looks, at first I thought it was going to be shorter too, but side by side, they're about the same. Really? I tried a couple of those and they both worked right hand in hand with each other about the same.
I hope those work really good because, well, I guess if they're not much shorter than the factory, but hopefully they're better than the factory, Stubby. Yeah.
They seem to be, from what I did this morning, they seem to be better than the short factory antenna. And actually, in my opinion, I think they are actually better than, from the initial testing I've done, they're better than that tactical.
Yeah. And I'll say at one point that is, for a lot of people, it's important, is they're made in the USA, which that's we need to make sure we.
And they're 5/8 antenna too, aren't they?
Not those. I don't think that was long enough that they couldn't get a 5/8 wave on it. So the full slim duck, there's another rubber duck from Smiley. That's a 5/8 wave antenna. The short rubber ducks are not. They're probably a quarter wave, which most of the antennas on the handheld, I think, are all quarter wave stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I asked Garmin. They never got back to me, but I was like, man, could I get the specs on your antenna? And so I don't know if they don't know it or don't have it or whatever, but I was wanting to see if it was a 5/8 wave or quarter wave and what the gains were. And I never got a response back. But I think most of the handheld antennas are quarter wave antennas. The Smiley rubber duck is a 5/8 wave antenna for sure. And that used to be called the long range rubber duck on our website. And this week I had the girls change it to a 5/8 wave so that people will know that that's the antenna different. We're talking about.
But they're both, that and the short one are both made in the USA.
Same company, USA.
Yeah.
Those are the only two antennas that are made in the USA that we have.
Yeah, and they seem to be really good quality. That's probably what I'm going to use from here on out. I had really high hopes for that tactical
I know,
one.
You were disappointed.
Is that the tape measure one?
The tape measure one, yeah. Yeah, and I tried a couple different ways, and actually I have two of them sitting here, and so I played with both of them, and the one worked better than the other one did. But it still was not that impressive, and I finally got one of them to pick up at a mile, but at a real easy kind of almost line of sight mile that I could see basically where that collar was sitting. And then as soon as I went to fold the antenna in half, I lose it.
The problem I think with that one, and I like I said, I've seen it, and I've seen other companies, other hound companies offer those types, and so I kind of thought they were vetted a little bit better. I don't know. Like I said, hopefully they work better.
It's a really wide.
Yeah, hopefully they're better than what you've seen. I don't know, but I don't want to overpromise anything to anybody. I think they'll be somewhat durable. I kind of think that after a while, if they bend in the same spot, I'm already noticing mine wants to kind of flop over. And probably because I just play with the damn thing all day. When I have it in my hand, I'm always clicking that thing like a tape measure.
Like a Tritronics toggle switch, man. Right, million miles.
Exactly. Like you're wearing it out just sitting in your hand. But it's like James just said, it's a wide band. It's like 136. I don't have one in my hand. Do you have one with you, James?
136 to 530
megahertz. So it's like really wide. So the base of that antenna has to have some kind of, I don't know what they do to get that wide band or that dual band, but it's got to have like an inductor or some kind of mechanism that I don't think is helping performance.
Yeah, like I said, I had really high hopes, and I was hoping that was going to be the one I would carry with me all the time. And
we'll see. Luckily, we didn't. I didn't go all in. I think I had 400 of them on the order, and then I was like, you know what? I better just cut that down to 100 to make sure they're good before we go all in. So
it's a cool concept. I mean, like for the right person, I can see how they're all right.
So it might be what we do if we don't see really good performance on them, Jason. We might discount those pretty good for people that want to try them with low expectations, and then ask them to report back to us.
And you know that the one thing that I didn't try that I probably should have tried and will try is, like we talked about, it seems like if you pick up, say you turn your collars onto the pickup and you start tracking all your dogs right there. It seems like if you're initially tracking them at that close distance, it's easier to continue to track them at a further distance than it is to lose them and then get them back. And so that's something that I do still need to try is, have it hook up, close range and then take off down the road and see kind of what it does is a fair comparison, at least to that small one. Cause that's how I started with that short one. And, I think for whatever reason, and maybe
it's
I'm
easier
crazy,
to hold,
but it
I
does
think,
seem
than
like
it is to pick up by a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So that covers the handheld antennas that we just added on our website. We do have now edge mount antennas on our website, which are just different mounts.
That only took a year.
Yeah, it was like out of stock for a year. We couldn't get them hardly anywhere. So we have edge mounts. We only got a handful of them for the first one, but so anybody that likes the edge mount, we have those in stock now, and if we run out, we'll have them back. We have more coming on the boat. So we'll 3-4 weeks.
So slow down. The edge mount is it clamshells over the edge of the hood, right?
Yeah, they used to call it. Some people call it a trunk mount, like for a car.
Mm-hmm.
You'd go over the edge of the trunk.
It like clamshells around it.
Yep.
Instead of having to drill holes and screw your fender mount in or run a magnet.
You can put it on a hood. Just different places you can put it. It would go up. And anyways. And then the triple mount magnets. We're going to have those. Those are not here yet for the ones without the ground plane. So we have some of these ground plane antennas in stock now. The ones that we are going to talk about the results here. And then a lot of the comments I got, Jason, were that they just like the magnets of those setups, those triple mount magnets.
Triple mag.
And so they're like, I've seen a couple people message me or comment me and go, Betty, these magnets are awesome. And so we do have plenty of the magnets coming with just a regular antenna base. So you don't have to run the ground plane if you don't want. So we'll be able to supply the triple mount base with or without a ground plane. The hard part and why we don't have more of them is because to fly and to airship, magnets are a bitch on a plane. And so that's the hardest part is getting all those magnets in small quantities that they'd let the airplane take them. So we had to be really strategic on what made the air shipment and what makes the boat shipment. So, unfortunately, we don't have the triple mount magnets without the ground plane, at least for another 3 or 4 weeks. So, anyways,
on those triple mount magnets, can you only mount one antenna?
Yes. Yeah, it just has an NMO in the middle. But basically,
it just has one. Okay.
All it is.
I see where James is going, though. Yeah, have your double for your
God
radio.
Dang it! I just got one. Now I just got one, James, and now you're already wanting to come up with another. Okay, well, I'll work on that. Okay.
If you could, you know what I mean, then you could run your radio antenna and your Garmin antenna off of one base.
Yeah, I just don't know how close they'd be.
Within 6 inches, probably.
Yeah,
that's
they
true.
might be pretty close.
That might
all
be
right,
too
I'm going to do a
close,
screen share. Jason,
Man, he shifts gears fast.
are we?
James? It's like
Audio and video are being recorded. So,
imagine
Joe,
being
I
in his
can't.
head.
it's a bad deal.
I only understand him
want
because I spent 6 years trying to.
Hopefully, this is recording our screen. James, can you see the screen?
I can see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can make
Looks
this.
like a Christmas tree over here.
I want to make sure that this is recording. Okay. Yeah. So here is the results of this test. So if you can see.
Now, which test? This is the test between
the
Browning.
The Browning antenna.
That we've sold forever.
We've sold forever. And, it's a 5/8 wave magnet mount antenna. and again, it's Browning. We've sold them in different, we've sold Tram, we sold Browning, we've sold other ones. We've always had just a 5/8 wave antenna. So what we had was a Browning. That's what we've been selling. And, we're going to use that name, the Browning antenna. The other antenna that I wanted to test was a Hound Recovery. They call it the Extenda antenna or the Hound Recovery antenna. This is it has a triple magnet on the bottom, and then it has those 4 ground radials that come out the side. They've been a really popular antenna on the website for a couple of years. We've already talked about the history of that. If you haven't heard some of that, we can go back in part 1 or part 2. But basically, those 2 antennas, it's like there's a big battle on the internet for those 2 antennas. It's like, you see these forums or these Facebook groups.
Which one's
like,
better?
Which one's better? And so what I wanted to do was just do a controlled test, put both of those antennas and try to stress out the colors as best I could. And so what I did is I parked my truck. So I'm on a snowmobile, and I put those antennas on top of my truck. I had 2 brand new Alpha 100s. I use the Alpha 100 because I kind of feel like sometimes these Alpha 200s don't get as good a range. And so I've just seen discrepancy between Alpha 200s where it seems like, and
I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that.
yeah, I just think that,
Yeah.
and I've told Garmin this, but I just don't have confidence that I could put 2 Alpha 200s side by side and one's not going to do better than the other. I just,
Right.
With the Alpha 100s, that still could be the same thing. I mean, that could be a true statement for Alpha 100s, but I just seen it seemed like there was more consistency with the Alpha 100s. So I was like,
That's what 12 years will get you updates.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, man, this thing's 10, 12 years old.
And these are just random, right? I mean, like you just grabbed
2
random antennas. Yep. You grabbed,
I
you didn't fine tune these.
I couldn't random. We had a person send us an antenna. I checked them. This is what was on my truck. My Browning, I never did trim. I don't think I did the SWR test on them. They were both like decent, right? So neither one of these I touched. So the only thing I can tell you is they were both placed on top of my truck. They were placed. I have a sunroof, or whatever you call them, big freaking moon roofs in my truck. It's that huge glass. I wish
the Rainmaker. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm not going to break that thing. I thought whenever I seen it. Anyways, and my truck is aluminum, so I don't have a really good magnetic mount. And this is one of the problems that's been hard for me to test, is because I had to haul these antennas inside and then set them up. So no kidding. I'm sitting there. I got my hood popped because I'm trying to take my antenna off to put on. And I got guys coming up like, "Are you okay? Your hood's." I'm like, "Oh, I'm just geeking out over here. Like, I got to put this antenna, whatever." So I'm here, trying to get my snowmobile. People are coming up to me, making sure I'm okay because my hood's lifted. I'm trying to pull that antenna out of my front bumper. So all that to say, they're sitting on a glass window. And I was talking to James, and I'm like, I don't know if that glass, maybe the ground plane, if there's any differences. I don't know if the ground plane helps on the glass or not. I don't know. So I was like, well,
Right.
And the other thing, the way my truck was parked, I had to put one antenna kind of on the back of my truck, which is pointing towards the area I was going to hunt, and one antenna on the front of my truck, which is away from the area I hunt. So essentially, if you can see and zoom in, let me see if I, if you can see right here, you see my screen, right? If I drop 2, I got to look and make sure I got this right. So I would say my truck, I have one antenna here, and then one antenna. And again, this is not to scale, but it just gives you an idea if you look at where those antennas are on my truck. So if
They're within 8 feet of each other, though.
No, not 8 feet. These are not actual points. Like, my truck's parked right here. I'm just zoomed out so you can see that if this is my truck and it's parked like this, The nose of my truck's right here. The tail's right here. And if I zoom out, you can see the area that the dogs were at.
Oh, we're off of one side of the truck.
And this antenna, the closest antenna to the dogs, was the Hound Recovery antenna, because I felt that if there was going to be an advantage that I was going to give, I wanted to give it to that antenna, just because we sell the Browning. And so, just to be clear, I put the
now we sell both.
But now we do. Now we sell both. So I'm like, well, so, and the profits are better on that antenna.
Way better.
But anyway, so I wanted to give the advantage to the Hound Recovery antenna. So any signal, I won't say any signal, but most every signal that came from the dogs had to pass by the Hound Recovery to get to the Browning. So maybe a guy could, if Browning's listening to this and they want to defend their antenna, I don't care which one wins. But if Browning loses, Browning could say, well, we were at a disadvantage. I just didn't want to have that for the other one. So I didn't want to be like, well, we set it up so that Browning would win. So let's take a look at what we got here. So first, this is the track that I ran. So here's my truck. This is where the truck was. And I actually roaded my dogs this time. And I rode them about 5 miles. I think I rode them out to about here. So I rode them out this road, and I took another road which goes around this hill. There's a mountain right in here, a hill right here. So I took them around this hill, which I figured I'd stress the connection out. I come down through here to a valley, and then I turned down this canyon here, and I rode them out this canyon. And then about over here, I ended up putting them in the sled. So I rode them from this point all the way to about right in here somewhere. Okay, because I figured, that's a long ways.
That's a ways, yeah.
I'll tell you how far that was. When I was looking at my GPS, I was like, I wanted to be. So I was like, 7 miles away from my truck whenever I finally was like, okay, I can put them in the dogs. Line of sight.
7 miles. That's a long freaking way compared to 7 miles of road.
I rode those dogs about 10 miles, right? It wasn't really good conditions to hunt, so I was like, well, we're going to just do this test. Don't tell my wife how far I rode those dogs, because first thing she asked me when I got back was,
did you take it easy on her feet?
How'd you fart? You rode these dogs? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, like
they're fine.
6-7 miles. But anyways, I wanted to make sure that the collars were out of they weren't in an aluminum box. So the other thing, Sadie is my dog, and she rides in my lap on the snowmobile. So I had 4 hounds, which would be Andy, Shy, Shelby, and Della. And then I had Sadie, and Sadie was always out of the box, right? So there were times where I put the big dogs in a box and kind of rode some areas and looked for a track. And then I also paired my handheld that was on my snowmobile, and it just has the short rubber duck, the stock short rubber duck Garmin antenna. I know how guys are telling me, what antenna do you use? I'm like, whatever's on my system. Like that's
whatever's on it when I grab it.
Right. And right now it's got that stupid short rubber duck one. Probably the worst antenna. Some people love it. Some people hate.
Clarify. You just said rubber duck factory.
The factory one. Yes. The one from Garmin.
The
one from Garmin. And if I wasn't lazy and we don't keep running out of those smiley ones, I would probably run the 5/8 wave. That would probably be my favorite antenna to run. But what happens is I always lose them. And so I always just grab what I got to get. So anyways, or the 14-inch flexible. One of my backup alphas has a 14-inch flexible, but the one I've been using and carrying has that short one on it right now. Okay. So that kind of lays out the track, right? You can kind of see where the antennas are. I tried to give the advantage. It's not much of an advantage. When we're talking, they're probably 3 feet apart on my truck. One's on the glass on my moonroof in the back, and one's on the glass on the moonroof in the front. I think the one in the back is more towards the driver's side a little bit, and the one on the front is towards the passenger side a little bit, so that I didn't have any antenna directly behind it, but that kind of makes sense. All right. Makes sense, James? Just kind of laid it out. All right. So the first,
yep.
And like I said, the farthest point, before we even start, the farthest point I traveled, if I go here and I measure from that truck 7.6 miles. I pretty much went 7.6 miles away from my truck is the point where I turned around. Because at this point, I'd have to come around and come in the way the road goes. So anyways, so if I look at, let's look at, we'll just start with the dog. Andy. I'm going to start with all of them here. So this is all of them right here. It's kind of confusing. I posted this on the Facebook, but you can see we had points where we lost communication. So all of the callers kind of lost communication through this section right here.
Same spots, yeah.
And that's why I put this butte here, is because that's behind a mountain. Basically there's a mountain that I kind of went around. And so that's fairly typical what I would expect. This right here from my truck to this point was 3.3 miles. So about that corner where I came in here and I turned, is I lost them. I didn't track them. So I can see that one antenna right here picked it up in the middle. So Shy is an X collar. And so you can see all of the collars when I look at this screen here. And if you're listening to this podcast, we're going to post the video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this instead of listen to it, please do. So behind that mountain, I only really picked up, I did get two here. I got one green right here pick up. And then if I look at this one, Shy got picked up. Okay. So you can see the green is
one antenna.
It says Shy X right here. So that's the X collar. And the other one, the red, has HRA for Hound Recovery antenna. So let's just look at Shy's now, because I can see right here. They both tracked almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
The green one, which would be the Browning, looks like it didn't track as good through this little section right here. See how this red one is more of a curve? And the green one is more straight line.
And you're up, just so everybody knows, update rates were all the same.
This is the same collar. The red and the green are the exact same collar. It's a different
handheld,
different antenna on a different handheld. So I'm going to give this little area right here, I'm going to give the Hound Recovery the win. It tracked through this little curve right here. It kept all these points on Shy. And I'll tell you how far away this was for the user listening. At 1.7 miles, at 1.5 miles, at 1.8 miles, the Browning antenna lost quite a few points through this turn. Okay? So, clear win right here for the Hound Recovery. The Hound Recovery, I can see a lot of points here with the Hound Recovery antenna. With the ground plane, I mean, we got to stop saying Hound Recovery because you can buy this at W also. But anyways, I was testing the Hound Recovery antenna, so that's what I'm going to use. Was clearly winning right here. This is good for the Hound Recovery.
It's like a less than 1,000-foot stretch of road, right?
Yep.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, it's not like it's a.
I can tell you how far. This little section right here, from here to maybe half a mile. For half a mile, it just held. There's no other way to explain it. It just held these better. So, but the other antenna knew it was there. I mean, it was close enough that it's close to that road. They both tracked out here, so they both hit this 3.2 miles before they turned. So I can see both of them knows that it turned here. Each antenna right here on this there's like a little corner right here. Both these antennas picked up. I can tell you where. It was just for a second. Neither one of them tracked really good on this back stretch, but the Browning antenna tracked it at 3.5 miles and pinged a point. And the Hound Recovery antenna got 3.5 miles.
And that's on the picking back up. Like they both dropped service. Yep. That's picking them back up.
They went all through this area and you would have been blind on where your dog was. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're right there. So, and then the Hound Recovery picked up at 3 miles here. And you can see it made this little corner right here that I went on. So the Hound Recovery grabbed this little spot right here, which is closer. But the Browning picked up at 3.2. Again, the Hound Recovery was tracking already. So looking at this, I need to X out of this. So this little section right here, And again here, Hound Recovery clearly that the antenna with the ground plane clearly tracked a little bit better through this area right here. So yeah, I would say the Hound Recovery definitely tracked this collar better and more consistent. If I looked here, I can see both of these collars hit this point right here. So this is the furthest point that this collar tracked from my truck.
Which is insane.
Both collars, I'm going to measure from here to here, 7.7 miles. Both collars registered that, or both antennas registered that at 7.7 miles.
And that's with an elevation gain in between. You had a
Yep.
butte in there between them.
Mm-hmm. And if I look at, let me turn my actual track on for a second here so I can see.
You guys will have to, all you listeners,
Where?
you got to check this video out. It'll make a lot more sense.
Yep. So Shy. So, okay. So, yeah, right here is this is the last place I tracked him was right here, 7.7 miles. I went down here, loaded the dogs up, and continued on.
So at this point, are they in the truck or are they still roading?
It's a snowmobile. So now that they're in the snowmobile. So at that point, I honestly, when I rode them out, I was like, dude, I'm so far away from this thing. There's no way I'm tracking them out here. So honestly, I'm really surprised that I was tracking that far when I got back home. So so we'll have a dog that's out. So now Shy's in a box through this area right here. So I would expect it not to track good because it's in a metal box, right? So I'm not gonna. It would have tracked better through this little section, but when I took them out of the box over here, you can see they both instantly picked up at 4.7 miles. So as soon as I let them back out of the box, because I got on this ridge, I'm like, okay, I'm probably I figured I was 4 or 5 miles away from the truck. I'm like, I should be far enough away that I just won't pick them up right away.
And it did.
And it did.
Both of them.
And I'm like, I didn't know this at the time because you got to think I can't see the results. I mean,
they're in the truck.
They're in the truck 5 miles, 4.7 miles away. I'm just looking at my GPS going, okay, I want to road my dogs back towards my truck so that I can see where they pick up. And they both picked up the same spot. 4.7 miles, they both picked up.
What about Sadie through that section?
We will look at that. Let's look at that next here in a minute. Anyway, so I run them through here. And Shy's collar, so right in here, I loaded them back up about right here. But Shy's collar, I took off of Shy because I didn't want to kill these dogs. Rode them back in 10 more miles. I was like, there's no way. In the snow. So when I put them back in the dog box for Shy, and I think it was Shelby. I can look at this data and you can see which dogs I didn't. But 2 collars I took off the dogs and put them on top of my pack so that they were outside the dog box and they would track. And you can see that they tracked fairly good through here. Again, I'm going to looking at this, I'm going to say the ground plane antenna did good. Clear winner. Like it wasn't like a blowout. You know what I mean? It's not enough that I wouldn't have known where my dogs were.
I was going to say, it's kind of weird. Like you say clear winner, and I see why you're saying that. But at the same time, like in average hunting like situation, it's the fine points that are missing between the two. The Hound Recovery definitely kept more closer fine points, but the overall track really is dang near identical, like farthest points away when they pick back up.
If you wanted to sit back away from your dog at 3 miles and you wanted to see what that dog like going around,
the exact trail,
like there's some points through here that it's just going to pick up more points. You're going to see more detail. So let's look at a couple other ones before we look at Sadie. So Shy was a good one. So let's just take a look at Andy again. If I tag, so Shy definitely got a further point. Andy's furthest point that either antenna registered, if I measure it. So this is another X collar, was 5.7 miles. She actually picked up earlier. So you remember Shy was
before you even let her out of a box. She picked up.
Yeah, remember. Well, I don't know where I let him out, but maybe I let him out here. So 5.1 miles is where she first picked up, where I kicked him out and started roding him back. Let me take a look at. We can zoom in on some of this. Again, I'm going to give the red a win right here. It's just tracking more consistent. So that's good. Whoops. They both kind of lost it at the same spot, 3.2 miles, where they lost it for good. They both know you can see this corner, so
yeah, that corner's better.
It knows
sure.
the corner, yeah. So both of them made this corner, whereas last time the other one didn't. They both went on this road here. Neither one looks good, to be honest with you. There's a lot of skipped points on them, but I probably would give the red just a little bit better of an advantage there, which is the ground plane. They both lost at the same point, which is, we measured that.
It was like
5.8 miles is
there we go,
where we lost them. So one went 5.9 miles. So the Browning went 5.8 miles before it lost it, and the ground plane went 5.9 miles. So again, definitely, if you were counting 0.1 miles at 5 miles, 5.9 miles, I don't know what percentage that is, 3%, 4%, ground plane wins. All right, here's Della. Again, she tracked out to that 3.3 miles. Again, I see this ground plane tracked a little bit better right there.
What kind of terrain is that right there? It's the same spot every time that Hound Recovery does outperform it. Is it just like a cut bank on that side of the hill, maybe?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything major there. There's a ridge right here, so you're kind of going around a ridge, I think. But
it's got to be something. Cause it's the same.
I'd have to look, but I'm not going to turn on too much detail because I don't want to give my spots away. But yeah, there's a mountain right here, so I think that ridge might go out there. So maybe there's something there happen that clearly nothing tracked in the middle here. Behind this mountain, and the Hound Recovery did pick up this corner, and you can see it started tracking a little bit before the Browning. Neither one of these look really good, but if I had to declare a winner on this one, I'm definitely gonna give the ground plane another win on this one.
Yeah,
I mean I don't see any other way. Who's left? Shelby,
and then Sadie.
I don't have Shelby's on here. Well, I'm not going to worry about Shady. Let's just go to my handheld. So my handheld, which is my Alpha 200, and you can see here, I always thought tracking handhelds was weird, but I think because it's like 30-second updates or whatever. A lot more sloppier. The callers definitely send out better signals. I think because they send out every 2.5 seconds or 5 seconds, and so there's more points. The green would be the Browning antenna, lost earlier.
And that same spot too.
Yeah, and then the the ground plane or Hound Recovery did go out a little bit further when it lost it. But if you look here, this is a clear winner on the Browning right here. See that Browning picked it up out here, where the Hound Recovery or the ground plane antenna. So if I looked at this one, I would say the ground plane antenna tracked it to 4.7 miles, and 5.3 miles is what we got out of the Browning antenna.
That's another half mile.
So this area right here, Browning clearly won. This area right here, 3.1 versus 2.0. That would be a win on the ground plane. So again, I look at it and I go, man, maybe a wash. You know what I mean? Your win here. Sometimes the other one wins. Sometimes this one wins. So here's the dog I want to look at, because this is the dog that was out all the time.
They're both better than I expected. Is that bad to say?
Yeah.
In my country, you don't get much more than a couple miles. I mean, tops with a roof mount, even it seems like. So I was pretty surprised.
So this is interesting. Sadie, who's in my lap, only tracked out to 1.3 miles before we lost her. Now she's running a mini collar, and then 2 miles was when the ground plane antenna tracked her. So I'd give the win to the ground plane. Both of them kind of tracked it spotty through this curve. Boom, boom, boom. Right? They're
But
both
better
tied
than
in.
some even.
Yep. And then,
That's a big difference.
yep, the ground plane picked up a couple spots on this outer loop here.
That one must be a flyer point, huh?
Yeah. So this is Sadie right here. So yeah, it picked her up over here. So I'm gonna say the ground plane won. Like honestly, like I don't think there's any way. It wasn't like a knockout. This wasn't what you see on the internet. Like, oh, the Browning only tracked 3 miles and the Hound Recovery tracks 14 miles or 7 miles. You know what I mean? Like
the distance wasn't really all that much difference. Really, it was the fine tracking between point A and point B.
Yep,
right, is what
exactly.
I'm seeing.
It picked up more points.
Right, more tracking points per mile of distance. I don't know. Distance traveled.
Yep. So I wouldn't have seen it if you didn't look at it with 5 collars and the same, you know what I mean? And I guess I'm going to have to try, like, how do you eat crow, man?
With garlic.
Garlic.
Barbecue, deep fry that crap, man. It's good.
Yeah.
Barbecue.
I'm trying to cook some up now and it's not tasting good. So is there another way to eat this stuff?
Oh, man.
So if I was a Browning fanboy, and I'm just gonna put my Browning fanboy, and I'll be like, I'm gonna try and defend the Browning guys.
I love that you refer to yourself as a fanboy. That's awesome.
I'm not, but if I was, I would have to say. So if this would have been the other way around, okay. If let me just put it this way: if Browning would have won, and if the antennas were swapped, if I didn't know, I would be like, okay, the antenna in front won. So I would rerun this test. If I put the Hound Recovery antenna towards the front of my truck, so it was behind the dogs, and I put the Browning in front, and the Browning outperformed the Hound Recovery, I would have to I would want to do a retest, and I'd switch positions. I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't care. The Hound Recovery was probably at the advantage for the setup,
right, over the Browning.
And so maybe if I had to try to defend, and I was like, oh, I'm going to just, it's like when you get to a slick tree and you're like, it could be up there.
It's somewhere.
It's up there
It's
somewhere.
up there somewhere.
I know it's there.
Like that snag, it's a hollow log. I mean, I don't know what.
It's flattened out.
I'm pretty sure it's a hollow one. I'm pretty sure it's in there. That's probably, if I had to, like, if it really hurt my feelings, I would be like, hell, the Browning was a little bit of a disadvantage. But I set it up that way because I didn't want to disadvantage the other side. You know what I mean? I wanted to make sure that I gave a fair chance and I gave any advantage that I could to the ground plane style antenna. And it clearly won. I mean, clearly. Like, I look at it and it's not night and day. I can tell you, you're not going to see me run this antenna. Like, I still think it's an ugly antenna. And I don't see enough improvement of tracking that I would need to run it. I mean, I look at this and go, I would know where my dogs are with either antenna just fine. And I would easily be able to get over to where my dogs are and pick them up.
Oh, for sure. Like you said, they both performed. It's just that fine tracking and like that one section of road. If people go back and they look at this video, you'll see what we're talking about. The overall 30,000 foot view, like, they both did really well.
Yeah.
But the fine tuning, definitely, there are way more track points with that Hound Recovery ground plane style.
There are.
Well, I also wonder, though, I mean, how much does the collar play into that also? Because you always have those collars that seem, at least I do, you have, collars that pick up faster. You have collars that seem to track further.
The other thing I was thinking is you look at those dogs in the box compared to Sadie's. Like, is Sadie's being that close to the snowmobile and like all the electronics from that affecting it? Or you think it was more the mini collar that made the difference? Buddy?
Well, if I looked at this and the only real place that Sadie outperformed everything was right through this section right here. And I would attribute that to the fact that she's sitting on my lap where my dogs are sitting in my box.
Mm-hmm.
So I would bet good money that if I was roading my dogs through this section,
you would have had them.
I would have had them. And if I had to gamble after looking at this, I'd probably say the ground plane did a little better.
Oh,
Like I just would, if I like money better than I do crow. So I'd be like, I'm going to bet against the Browning antenna. So, what I don't know is if the difference is in the way I put them on my truck. If I would have switched and put, so this is the Hound, I call it the HRA antenna, Hound Recovery antenna. And this would have been, come on. And this one would have been the Browning antenna. What I don't know is if I would have put the Browning on this side so that all of this data has to go to the Browning first, and maybe that antenna shielded it. I don't know.
Do you think, though? I mean, really, like, I'm not a smart enough guy to tell you that it wouldn't. But to me, like, I can't understand how it would make that much of a difference having one whip 3 feet closer in a line of sight than the other one. Like,
I just know I had guys telling me that if you put them too close, it affects the antenna. And what they were telling me was, honestly, they were telling me because they were worried that, I think they were concerned that I was going to say the Browning antenna did better because blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I think their concern is, and I don't remember who it was someone on Facebook, and they were like, well, if they're together, that affects it. And I'm like, well, which antenna does it affect?
Well, yeah, because if you don't have them side by side, you can't do a real comparison. Like, let's cut the crap.
Right. Yeah.
Like, who cares? We don't care which one did better, really. Like, do we? I mean, it's just an honest blind test.
Not at this point, selling both.
Yeah. I don't care which one you buy. But it's interesting. It was,
but you get a good deal on the one that did better.
Yeah.
What are they on the website?
10% off right now through the end of the month.
Yeah.
I think it's the end of the month, but so they're $120 and 10% off is, so I think you can get them for like $108 right now with the ground plane shipped, triple magnet antenna. I'd
like
have to say
15 foot of coax, right?
18
foot cable,
and a good antenna. Like, both of these antennas are good antennas, but if you're a guy in this situation, if you want hardcore data that one did better than the other, right, on this test, the ground plane antenna did win. And maybe I don't want to do this again, and I don't want to do another podcast, and it was actually kind of difficult to get enough time and to do this setup, and I can't road my dogs that far again, so like, I really would just want to go hunt. You know what I mean? So, like, this was just a crappy day that it was raining, and I never did find a track, and so I never even got to turn loose and go hunt and get distracted on this day. So I actually made the whole loop. But I would switch positions and rerun it, but I'm not going to do that.
I don't think you'd see much difference.
I'm not going to do that. There you have it. I lost my antenna, the one that I try to defend and say is the best. I have to declare that I lost, and I don't know what that means. I got to eat crow.
I do know, though, for that little bit of advantage, I don't want to be running around looking like E.T.
Well, like I said, your key points, I mean, really, there is not, when you look at all these, those are all of them stacked, aren't they, buddy, that you're showing right now?
Yep, that's everything.
When you really look at that, I mean, come on. You know, the end goal and the end data.
Anywhere you see blue is a spot where you were not tracking dogs with either one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the overall picture as people look at this, like we said, it's the fine points. Like, you'd find your dogs with either one of them antennas.
Mm-hmm. I would hope so.
Yeah.
If not, there's a serious issue.
Yeah, right.
It's not related to the antenna.
Yeah, it's you.
It's either antenna is giving you plenty of distance. There's no knockout. There's no, you know what? Jason, I think I talked to you on the way home yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I had a situation, James, I don't know if I talked to you or not, but I think I did. I told you when I got back to my truck and I looked at the Alpha screen, the Browning antenna, I seen this little line right here on the Alpha, and it was like 3.2 miles. And I was like, I just had this one little line on my Alpha, the antenna with the Browning. And then the ground plane antenna had all this stuff. And it was like, whoa. And I was like, holy crap. I did a quick measurement.
That bad?
Yeah, when he first called me, you said that you thought it just destroyed it.
I said, we got freaking destroyed. This thing tracked 7 miles, and the Browning antenna only tracked 3.2. I was like, we got obliterated. You know what I mean? When I looked at and I was tired, I was wet, I was loading up. And so I thought yesterday when I'm driving home that if you want to talk about making excuses for a slick tree, I was coming up with some slick tree excuses, because that was like 3 miles versus 7 miles. I gotta come up with a good excuse. You know what I mean? Like
the Alpha went to sleep. There was a serious issue here.
And that was the thing. And what was boggling my mind was I never got it on my return trip. I'm like, dude, I didn't track this thing. I think I told you. I said,
yeah,
we didn't track 500 yards on the way back in. I'm like, that. It's like, dude, I know that cat's in that tree. You know what I mean? Like, I really, for reals, I do. For real. I know I can track 500 yards with a Browning antenna. Why didn't it track 500 yards? And so anyways, I didn't look at this data till this morning when we were getting ready for this podcast. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how, but I got to at least, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to show you the data. And when I loaded it into the computer and I seen that it actually did, at least it put up a fight, I was like,
the clouds parted.
Oh, wow. Like, okay, something happened with that Alpha that it just didn't show it on the screen, but that Alpha definitely got the points and definitely put them on the screen. I should probably turn the Alpha back on and see if they're on there now. I kind of think that it's like one of those deals where you turn it off and you turn it back on and it shows all the tracks or something. I've seen that.
Yeah, me
errors
too.
And stuff like that. So I kind of think that's what happened, but yeah, I was definitely wheeling on the drive home that we had a 3 mile versus a 7 mile blowout. And I don't, that's a whole plate of crow that I'd have to eat. I'm like, I don't know how long you got to eat that. So
after the first one, you get used to it.
Well, I don't know. After the 5th or 6th one, you probably start liking it. I'm like, man.
Oh, man.
So, but when I got the data and I pulled it on the computer and I was like looking to figure out how I was going to display it, it wasn't as big of a browbeating as I thought. To be honest with you, I didn't even measure before our podcast. I thought it was going to be a little bit. Like, I thought the Browning was going to win a couple more times, but just looking at this one, I was like, oh yeah, sometimes going to win, sometimes lose. But going through them, I mean, it's clear that, maybe I'd probably give it a 10%, 8 to 10% advantage is what I would say.
Can you access the tracking points on this? Like, how many tracking points for one versus the other?
That's a good thing. Let's look at that real quick.
Because I mean, like I said, the distances and overall.
So Shy did pretty good. Let's look at Shy's. That would be a good one. She was
the best one, I think.
That's actually a really good one. So, let me see how many points. 759 points.
In a distance of 28.6 miles of track, right? Versus line of sight.
Yeah. And so, 759 versus, drum roll, 1199.
And a total of 30.5 miles.
Yeah, that's hard to tell because you these points out here
that cut out. Yeah, I know.
But the tracking points are definitely
substantial.
Let's look at another one.
And those were both they're all on a 2.5 second update, right?
Yeah, same caller.
He said.
So same caller.
600 Andes versus 894.
So I mean, you're talking.
So at least I called it right. It's let's look at Della. 500 points versus the red one, 796.
800. Yeah, you're talking over 20% on the tracking points.
20% more points. Man, God dang it! You throw another crow on there.
I mean,
appreciate it.
Cook it up for you if you want.
That is kind of impressive.
That to me is the most impressive part.
Yeah.
The points are what do it for
Yep.
me. The distance, like I don't care because I'm going to find them either way. But
Well, and because a lot of times that distance, you know, you can have them. I've noticed when you're, you know, say you're 3 miles and you're losing them and picking them up, losing them and
Right.
picking them up. A lot of times when you're looking at that distance, you're not actually looking at real time anything.
Yeah.
You know,
So to be, man, you guys are gonna make me run this.
I'm
test
sorry,
again.
man. I'll cook it up for you, but that's a lot.
I still think we could be looking at antenna. I don't know that it's just the ground planes and the antenna.
well, I would be curious to see what happens if you stick both of those on an actual metal roof.
Well,
You know, when they're actually.
I think what I need to do next is I need to just rerun it again. And I can do this, like Jason, that's a really good way of doing it, is just looking at the tracking points.
Mm-hmm.
Except the hard part is I can't road those dogs like that. So maybe I'll take a couple extra collars and just strap them to my
Just strap them
my
to your
pack
handlebars or something.
and do it that way.
The top of your sled.
Yeah, but
The tracking points to me is the only way you're going to settle that.
Yep. And 100% that antenna in this situation did beat it, like clearly. And so my question is again, every time you do this, my thought goes, well, I wonder if I took a different Browning antenna. You know what I mean? Is it the antenna that's been on my truck? And
Well, you
so
said everyone's different though. Your what is it? Your RSA? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Like everyone can be different.
It just depends on how much I want to try to defend this thing.
I wouldn't defend it at all. At this point, like it never came down to one was better than the other.
But all those guys that were like Browning, I don't know. I on this test, it's clearly there. I mean, there's no way to call it. Clearly, the ground plane antenna wins. I kind of think this is like a football game. I still stand by the fact that it's close enough that if I switch positions, maybe switched antennas, maybe I had to trim that Browning down, and maybe it just needs to be tuned. I don't know where the SWR is. I don't think I cut it, so I think I need to cut another 1/4 inch off that antenna to get it even closer. And so I'm like, I wonder if a small change in the Browning in the different position maybe makes it switch. And maybe then that Browning would track more or not get beat as bad or whatever. I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't think I'm going to have
I do think a new antenna, you know, putting a new versus
right.
They were both
The
old
one that's
antennas. They're like I said, this is a customer. I don't know how old the other one was, but this was an antenna that sent to me. So I know the one on my truck has been on there for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, and it got all the bugs and shit on the whip and
I've seen it riding on your flatbed with shit piled up on top of it, and you know it's not like it's been.
That cat is in that tree. I'm telling you right now, that cat is up there.
You say unequivocal winner basically, but like I said, I think the distance and all that they're pretty dang close. It's just the fine tracking points. Like it just
it's
definitely
not double.
It's not double. It is not what people were out there claiming. I will tell you that right
100% not double.
Yeah. No, it's not. But the tracking points were almost, quite
20 to 30% more tracking points in the same distance.
Yeah, and some of those points were that's honestly
5 miles plus.
That's if there is an advantage. And again, if I was an engineer, which I was at one point, and I would duplicate this, and then I would duplicate this, and I would duplicate it. And if I could reproduce this 5 times,
right,
then I would clearly say, and I'd be a salesman and be like, nope, this antenna is better. Okay, one test, one day. It was as fair as I could make it, and I'm going to call them the winner. Like I'm going to call that ground plane antenna the winner because that's what we're seeing. But one test, one day is not the way for me to confidently say.
Scientific.
Yeah, you don't just go and go, oh yeah, we just skated by this one time. I'd be like, no, let's redo it, and then let's redo it, and let's redo it. And if you consistently over 5 or 10, you recreate the same data, then I would be like, absolutely. I mean, at some point I'd be tired of getting a freaking bloody nose because I'd be like, well, you know what I mean? Like it just keeps losing. I kind of think that if it'd be like Rocky Balboa, let's try it again.
Rocky 5.
Right, exactly. Rocky 5, Rocky 6, Rocky 7. You know what I mean? Well, the 8 or 9, I'll be like, okay, we're just done. But the true story is you can buy them either one. We are selling both of them. I'm kind of with James. I am not riding around. My wife specifically asked me to take that antenna off my truck when we went to town because she's like,
because you look like a tinfoil hat wearing crazy person.
You already attract some attention with the dog box in the back. Mm-hmm. But man, when you put that antenna up on top, you definitely.
It's like those guys that are real into ham.
Oh, yeah. Come on now.
You see a little Corolla rolling around with his Yagi off the roof.
More into ham radio than you are, buddy.
I'm not into it.
Antennas on the house.
License plates. You can see their license plates, their call sign. KF7 CAQ. I'm like, yep, there's a guy. Yeah, exactly. That's what you kind of look like. And so if that's important to you, we're making fun of you, but power on. I don't care. Like I honestly, I do not care if that's what you like and the performance shows you that that's a better setup. Great. Like I'm just not going to, I'm going to be happy to take it off.
What I know is if I'm 5 miles away from my dogs, I'm not going to probably sit there in the truck and wait for fine points. I'm going to get closer.
Yeah. There's real life application here that they're both.
Yeah. Like it gets to a point where it's like, oh yeah, I picked them up 5 miles away and then you're going to be driving as fast as you can drive to get closer. Right. I wouldn't really necessarily care about those finer points at that long distance.
I just want to know about where they are and how to get closer to them.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. Like I said, they both did a lot better than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I think those both did better than they would do in my country for sure. And knowing where you're hunting.
Yeah. You can't say, but was it where you took me? Last time?
With the engineers.
With the engineers?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the dog tree engineers.
Then I know right where you were. And that is pretty gnarly ground.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, it's rough country in there. I'm really surprised that in that spot that it worked that far.
Yeah, that's super surprising, knowing the ground.
But I noticed when we were in there on sleds, I could track my dogs further with regular handheld than I could in most places. And I don't know if it's just because you're up above everything or what the deal is, but it does seem like it's a really good spot to track dogs.
Like I said, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting the 7 miles. I wasn't, when I put the dog, I thought if I were to gamble ahead of time, I would have told you 3.2, 3.5 miles is where I probably would have lost them. I wouldn't have, I didn't on this, when I kicked these dogs out here at like 5-6 miles or whatever it was, I thought I was well out of range. I honestly didn't expect to pick them up right there. I was like, I'll start them here.
So we can road them into range kind of deal?
Yeah. I was trying to road them into range, and apparently they just drilled it at that 5 miles or whatever that was. And all of the dogs. It was 4.5 miles. You know what I mean? It was all the dogs, just every one of them coming right in there.
All of them picked up right there.
So I think it was some of that was coming around a ridge, and it's more of the topography, the mountains and the terrain. More of that, I think, is what's driving most of this data.
Because your truck was at a lower elevation, correct?
Is it? The same.
In this area, it would be. Or on this part, it would be. Down here, it would be the same. This would be the same.
Okay.
This would be probably a little bit lower. So I was same, and then this drops down. And then this climbs way up over through here. And so I came up, maybe a 1,000 foot higher here and come down and then come back up around. So,
but the farthest points are good line of sight from your truck at that point. Like up and down in elevation. But
I started at a good level. There was no major hill climbs, but there was definitely some. I mean, I went from almost no snow to 4 foot of snow. You know what I mean? So I had definitely elevation gains that. At least the snow was way different. I'd get down to patchy snow versus really deep snow. So yeah, it was. I felt like it was a good test. I kind of felt like it wasn't going to be. I didn't expect it to do as good. Either one. I was like, when I seen the data, I was like, wow, I should have gone further. You know what I mean? Maybe I should have gone 10 or 15 miles out, but I don't know.
I don't
Anyways.
think there's a guy out here that expects to get more than 7 miles or needs to. I mean, really, like, you're not going to let your dogs get that far away, are you?
Yep. So, the antenna that we're talking about is on dusupply.com. It's the triple mount with the magnet.
Triple mag
mount with the ground planes. You can take those ground plane radios out. They're put in there by set screws. I firmly believe that you can run that antenna without the ground planes, and it would act just like this Browning. So I think, James, you're talking about how goofy it looks. Maybe what you do is you run that antenna, but you keep the Allen and the ground planes on, and so when you're out in the woods and you're not there's nobody around,
nobody looking at
nobody's watching you. You can sneak up there and throw those ground planes in there and track those dogs at 5 miles and get those fine points. And then before you come to town or whatever, you could take them back out so nobody, like sneaking, like riding a moped.
Yeah.
So you could take them out. You don't need to have those in there to run that antenna, is what I'm basically saying.
And the mag mount, it'll work with any of the Browning antennas too, right? If somebody wanted the Browning, but they wanted the triple mag mount, it's an NMO. You can just swap the
absolutely.
whip, right?
Yep. And we're going to have magnet mounts without the ground plane adapter configuration. We're going to have the triple mounts with the ground plane configuration. So if a guy wanted to see for themselves, what I'm saying is for $108 now through January 31st, you could buy this antenna. And if you're like me and you don't want the goofy ground planes on there, you could have them behind your seat with an Allen wrench. And literally it would take you all of like 2 or 3 minutes to throw them on. If you bought into the fact that they do better, like if you do, you could easily do that. And, I think, in my opinion, there would be nothing wrong with that. Like that may be what I do, except for I got a aluminum truck, so I can't run I have to run a fender mount or whatever. I just can't run that antenna because I don't have a place to strap it. So
it would be interesting. So if you're going out and you're testing again,
I don't want to test. I want to go hunt.
I know. And that's the worst part. People joke about going hunting all the time, but like, I know what you mean. When you go out, it's tough because you do have to test, and it's not fun, really. You'd rather just be hunting.
Yeah.
But how do you think that ground plane, if it were on your snowmobile or in a vehicle without an existing, like the roof of your truck is a ground plane.
Yeah. That would be
cases. Like a UTV or a snowmobile where there's no real ground plane. I wonder what difference it would make there.
Yeah. And maybe what we should try is just stick it on a piece of
like
wood.
Your sled box or something.
Yeah, at home. You could probably do that in town somewhere and just throw it on something that doesn't have a good ground and then drive a loop. It would be hard for me to test that on a snowmobile.
Yeah.
Number one, I thought about mounting a whip on my snowmobile, like a long range whip. But I'm really worried it's going to whap me in the back of the head when I go through some of the stuff I go through. You know what I mean? Like, I really do not want, because I don't wear a helmet when I ride my snowmobile.
Right.
I should maybe, but I'm like, dude, that thing would hurt like hell. You know what I mean? I gotta be out in the middle
it's
of the woods.
colder than a witch's tit, and that thing slaps you. It's going to hurt.
Right. I'm like,
I've been there.
I'm going to get knocked out in the middle of the woods.
Yeah,
Sure,
you're going to throw something at the end of that trip. I guarantee it.
Yeah. So I don't want to get hit in the head. With the ground plane radials, I feel like they'd be in my way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they'd probably poke me and I just think it would annoy me. And especially on a snowmobile, most of the time, I stay closer with the snowmobile than I do with the truck.
Yeah, right. You're closer to your dog.
It feels like it. You know what I mean? Because I can move faster. I can get around better. I can cut through different spots. You know what I mean? There's places I can go with a snowmobile I can't go with my truck. So it is a valid question. I just don't know that. I don't know that it's worth it. I don't know. What's your thoughts, James?
I don't know.
You ever thought about putting an antenna on your snowmobile?
No, I never have. I carry one of those compact portable long ranges, and I've never had that fail me. Basically,
Yeah.
You know, when I need to reach out there and get something, I grab that out of my pack and screw it on there, and I can even kind of tuck it up in my windshield.
Yeah.
And stick it there and ride down the, ride through the trail or whatever. And for me, it's like you say, you get too much stuff on there, and then trying to get into tight spots, and it just seems like
those
a pain in the
compacts
ass.
are a lifesaver for that, I think.
And honestly, I think you get just as much range out of that compact,
Right.
as long as it's
Yep.
not broken. I do
Sure.
break a fair amount of them, but I feel like you get just as much
A roof
range
mount.
out of one of those as you do.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think the other thing I thought about, we need to wrap this up. I know we're running late and people are probably tired of hearing the same thing. This is what I do. I just talk over and over and over again the same thing.
Per usual.
I got a dead horse on my wall.
I always wondered what you meant by that, but now I see it sitting up there. There is literally, it looks like Napoleon up there and a dead horse, and they put Buddy's face on it.
It's a guy beating a dead horse, and they cut a little picture of my face
It's
out.
great.
And there's me beating a dead horse.
It's
And
fantastic.
I need to name that horse like Fred or something. But
Well, yeah, Fred. That's a no-brainer, man. You're a Rodney fan, aren't you?
yeah, no. So speaking of that versus a truck antenna, I think the coax on these truck antennas are better
Yeah.
shielded coax
For sure.
than the coax on those handheld antennas. And so I think those handheld antennas, and I probably will look at maybe doing this, could probably use a better shielded coax
Just change the
to
coax.
improve them. Little things like that. And that's probably the best thing that's come out of this, is this really made me stop and think.
What contributes to it?
You know what I mean? We focus on that ground plane so much, but really when I sit back and think, I think the coax is much more important than the ground planes. And there's
I'd agree.
double shielded coax, which I think that's what we're using. You know what I mean? I got to cut one of these apart, but if not, I'm like, it makes me wonder, would a quad shield coax or a double shielded coax, that gets expensive, but I'm like, I wonder if that would make it. I mean, if
I would think so.
I would look at this and go, there's no need for me to spend a ton of resources to improve what I see here. Like there is enough with that antenna that I am totally confident I'm going to be able to keep up with my dogs, know where my dogs are, keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I wanted to get another 10 or 20%, if a guy was really looking and trying to get that extra, 10%, you want to go 6.2 miles instead of 5.9 miles? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I wonder if you change the coax. You know what I mean? Like if I was like putting on my engineering cap, I'd be like, well, maybe the coax, maybe that's where the loss is happening.
I'm not a smart guy, but I would say coax would make a big difference, just knowing how RF frequencies can affect electronics. You would think that the antenna is the antenna.
See, and I would say that is true on higher frequency. So
but maybe
if
not
this
the
was higher
MERS.
frequency, I would absolutely be like the coax. So when we're talking about satellites,
Mhm.
Elon Musk, when we're talking about Dish Network TV,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like when you're running and that's normally when we talk about impedance, we're talking about 75 ohm for Dish Network, right?
Right.
It's not the 50 ohm stuff that we're using, but if you got to run a Dish Network, so you got a satellite and you got to run that in a tree, and then you got to run that 250 feet to your box in your house. Yeah, you better be using quad shielded,
That cable makes
expensive.
a big difference.
Yeah, you're not just using regular, simple, cheap coax. You got to use that really expensive quad stuff. But that's in the gigahertz. So the loss happens so much faster. When you're talking about 153 megahertz, 155 megahertz, it's there. Loss is loss, but it's not hard to push that type of megahertz. So yes, you're going to see improvement. I just don't know how much improvement. Yeah. I don't think you're going to see it like you do in a Dish Network signal, which is like gigahertz. I'm just spitballing here. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but yeah, it does wrap my brain around this. But at the end of the day, Jason, I want to go freaking hunt. And I don't want to I quit Intel for a reason. So I didn't have to think about this smart shit. You know what I mean? I could just go hunt. And it's got to be good enough for me just to go hunt. And this is. James, you want to be the geek and go test
No, not really.
quad shield and double shield and I don't know.
No.
You know, if somebody wanted to invent something I'll tell you. I'll give you every secret right here.
$1 million idea, right?
$1 million idea. And maybe one day I'll figure this out. When I was at Intel, there was a company that we used SMA a lot. Okay. So the thread on SMA, I had a vendor come to me and show me these new cables. Cause we would use these really expensive. I mean, these cables, it'd be like a 2-foot cable, 2-foot SMA to SMA coax cable. And it'd cost about like $4,000, $5,000.
Holy crap.
Just one cable because it had a super low loss. Like, because when we're talking about computers, we're talking about gigahertz, you know what I mean? We're talking about high speed shit, which has a really high loss. It loses its power really quickly. So you got to have a really good cable. They had, and again, this is 12 years ago. They had a quick connect SMA. It was like a sleeve. If you remember those old push on TV coaxes, you push them on. Like the old TV.
Oh, like the old RCA?
Yep, the old RCA.
Yeah,
it was like
audio in, audio out.
It was kind of
RCA
like
cables.
that, but it had like or another good example is like a water.
Like
quick
a water
connect,
hose, quick connect.
a quick connect water or air. It was kind of like that where it had the threads, but you could slide it over the SMA and then the sleeve would come over it and clamp them down.
Okay.
If we could make an antenna with
sweet.
that connector, so your truck antenna was like quick connect SMA, just clip. And
like where it would push on and hold on with friction, and then you could push
and then
release.
you could have a good 14-inch flexible or whatever.
Yeah.
That did the same thing over the SMA and clamp down.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been looking for that ever since.
Well, that makes sense.
That's 10 years I've been looking for that. The problem is those ones, because they were like they were patent pending and patent or whatever, and I was like, I remember it cost an extra like $1,500 per connector to do that.
That's
and
insane.
I don't think Hound guys are going to be like, yeah, give me an extra $2,000 worth
No,
of
but
quick
think
connects.
about how much technology, like you're from that world,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Think of the cost of technology and how it depreciates over time. It's crazy. Like now it might make sense.
I've looked. I haven't seen it. But and it's like, I don't have, and I'd probably get my ass sued by whoever that was. I don't remember what cable company it was, but I know how it works. It was a very simple idea.
Yeah.
But it's the patent part of it that they would just come in and just like kick me in the teeth. But I remember, in Intel, I mean, dude, we'd spend $200,000 on cables. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, we just need these cables. And so we were like, yeah, throw them quick connects on for $1,000, it cost $2,000 extra to do these quick connects. But it was just so much better than threading on a connector. You just clip it on.
So it would slide on easily, right?
Yep.
And then it would secure.
And then
so
it
you
had a little
have
sleeve, a little sleeve that just slid over. So it's kind of like
to
an
hold it in place,
like the water or the air hoses.
It's just like an air nozzle.
It's
like
kind of like that.
inch.
Yep.
That makes total sense.
It was badass, and I still think of this to this day. I'm like, dude.
So smart guys out there listening, radio geeks,
we'll sell it, man.
we
we'll
need
sell
that.
But
it'll be worth your while.
yeah, if you design that SMA connector that was cheap enough that we want to buy them for $1.
We won't even tell whoever got the
$1.50
patent where they came from.
right. We need to spend $1.50, not $1,500 per connector.
Move the decimal point on that.
Yeah, a couple, and but that would be so badass compared to these. I don't like the quick connects. Those BNC quick connects everybody has. They fall apart. They
wear
great.
out. I mean, they physically wear out.
The loss you have in that connector. It know, if you're working about range, if you're looking at this range and you're throwing a quick connect on it,
you're shooting
yourself in the foot.
Yeah, that's what I say.
But the ones that were done with the SMA, there was no loss on them.
Because
that's why we like
solid
them.
Connection. It's not just a wiggly.
It was the same connector. It was the same. You just didn't thread it on.
Yeah, you didn't get
it clamped on the threads, and so it had the threads, but it had little grooves in there that clamped into those threads.
That makes total sense.
It was awesome, and maybe one day we'll do it. But I'm like that.
The next wheel that needs reinvented.
Yeah. So, anyways, there you go, James. $1 million idea. It won't be maybe a couple $1,000 idea.
Perfect.
So, all right. Anything else? We've kind of hammered these antennas. This is part 3. This is the final part. I am not doing a retest. I'm just going to take my loss. I'm going to sprinkle some pepper on this crow. Maybe I'm going to try some of that barbecue. What kind of barbecue? Like Good barbecue, Dave's barbecue, some kind of good
I'd
barbecue to
imagine
put on
like
there.
jerk chicken, it'd be about the same.
Yeah, burnt.
Burnt.
And we'll call it good. All right, James.
Perfect.
Jason.
It was nice
Alrighty,
to
well,
hear
we'll
you
see
from
you
you,
guys
James,
soon,
on
I'm
the
sure.
podcast. You actually got to talk on this one.
Yeah, I
Kick
actually
Brad
spoke
off
this
here so
time.
James can get a word.
Let you tell a story. All right, guys.